Hi there, 24 Hours of PBL. My name is Jane Shore, and I'm thrilled to be here with my colleague Joel Dankoff to share some of the work we've been doing in Philadelphia as we co-create the Revolution School, a 9th through 12th program that is place-based and devoted to engaging beyond the walls of the classroom. We started Revolution School in 2019 with a mission to break down the walls between learning and life. And alongside Revolution School, we built what we call the School of Thought, which is a community of community builders who are working in this area of change and educational innovation. Our goals are to amplify the work of others, to build resources, and to connect people and ideas. Today, we're going to talk to you about our place-based program, and I will talk a little bit about the design of the model for sustainable partnership, and Joel will talk about the execution of that model. I want to go back to this idea of breaking down the walls between learning and life. Our students make this happen. We are devoted to connecting the outside with the inside and the inside with the outside. So part of our mission is really to introduce our city to these amazing young people and amazing young people to all kinds of opportunities and educational experiences that can happen just beyond the walls of our center city location. Our space is right dab in the middle of the city of Philadelphia. And we not only have this incredible location to just step outside and walk to City Hall and to museums and to organizations that support young people, but also our spaces are designed to have open doors, to have space for students and teachers to learn and think and be together. And our goal in breaking down the walls between learning and life is to recognize that we're all in this together. So our first question is really, how might a school break down the walls between learning and life? We wonder what you think, and we're going to provide some examples of the ways in which we've been engaging in this question. So today, what we're going to talk about are two elements that we think are essential for place-based education. And the first is nurturing of partnerships and creating a sustainable model where the relationships are at the center, and then tying the program in the school to the place in which you're learning and teaching. That, for us, is what experiential place-based learning is. So instead of going into why partnering, because we think that the audience for 24 Hours of PBL certainly understands the importance of community involvement in school programming, we're going to focus on how to connect community with learning and learning with the community. I'm going to start with the model that we developed over the last 4 years of the school development. We had a year zero in which we planned our program and then opened our doors in 2019. One of the biggest lessons during that opportunity time was that many times when schools or organizations are looking to engage in the question answering or learning together, they begin in this area of projects, the Zone 3. And what we're going to talk about is going back a few, because we believe that in order for the community building to be sustainable and for ideas and partners to have influence and change, we need to root those community building exercises and activities in purpose. So we start with purpose. What is the purpose? What is the purpose of school? What is the purpose of learning? What is the purpose of empowering students? How do we, as organizations for learning that are rooted in youth voice, engage in understanding the areas in our communities that are rooted in purpose? So what does starting with purpose mean? Research has found that effective partnerships need diversity among partners, a shared vision, shared accountability, so measurement systems or ways of knowing that you've reached what you want to reach, shared measures, and blended staff. What we've learned in our research is that effective partnerships also need to be rooted in non-organic connections, meaning that we have to reach beyond our own networks in understanding that to have diverse partners requires us to get outside of our own networks. They are also rooted in mission advocacy, and this defines our definition of purpose. So we work to understand the mission of other organizations and individuals and to ensure they understand our mission as we begin. Before beginning partnerships, we begin just relationships. There's a shared language among the partners that we have rooted ourselves with, and they become influential champions in our work. We engage in what we think of as apprenticeship thinking, where we all can learn from one another and we can all serve as leaders and learners in that relationship. So again, the zones of community building is rooted in the idea that we don't begin with projects, we begin with purpose. Then we move through 5 zones that engage us in sustainability. And the first one is people. We think of our connections not as networking or transacting, but as community building. I hold up these 2 wonderful people as examples of some of the partners that we've worked with over the years. Both are local to Philadelphia, and both have the goal of engaging young people in learning in different ways. Tiffany Yao from Fulfill started a nonprofit in which she engages in students in learning about entrepreneurial thinking. Michael Butler is a journalist, and he was part of the Report for America core crew, and he worked alongside our teachers at Revolution to co-teach some of our history courses. These were organic partnerships that started and were rooted in the idea that our missions aligned and we knew each other as humans. We then move to zone 2, where we get into some participation. Participation means we've established a relationship, individuals know our mission and our work, and then they join us, they participate. On the upper right corner of your screen, you see a young woman who was the Youth Poet Laureate of Philadelphia. She visited us quite a few times, both in her role as Youth Poet Laureate and also for our English classes. Her mission was to share her own work and to inspire other young people so that they could produce other forms of expression and art and find ways to talk about the things that were happening in the world. We also engaged in participation involving our community partners in co-creating blog posts with us, in participating in gatherings, in podcasts that allow us to build community around ideas before we engage in projects. The third zone is when we finally get to the projects. And here, the shared language is really important. Traditional partnerships have a kind of language in which you might have a guest speaker, you might go on field trips. In our co-creation, our partnerships use a different language. Our guest speakers become mentors for our young people. Instead of understanding what we're doing, we have been able to cultivate advocates for our work. Our field trips become field work expeditions that tie really closely to program, and you'll see more of that when Joel presents. And finally, we don't have internships. We have what we call revternships. They're unique. They are rooted in the student and warm relationships. So now we're at zone 3 finally, and here are the projects. They don't start until you root yourself in purpose, people, participation, and then you get to this place where partnerships and projects are a natural next step. We've been very lucky to have engaged partners from universities, nonprofits, and local and national organizations. Our School of Thought co-creators become part of our community. Their faces and their names become our mentors and our advocates, and these projects become sustainable parts of our program. Our methodology and our timeline really starts from the connection between the teams that come together to create, defining some of the assets that we share, and clearly aligning what our plans are for the projects. We also keep in regular contact, which is essential to any sustainable partnership. A next step in the process of sustainable partnerships are to recognize that projects shouldn't be a one-time experience. We see our projects as just the beginning, and when they begin to take shape, we iterate upon them. So we look at the next step as pilots, where we get systematic about collecting how things work and how we can improve, what we can hold up, what we can amplify. And finally, sustainable partnerships, which we define as partnerships over years, over time, rooted in the idea that organizations become part of ours, and the individuals at places like PhillyCam, Fulfill, Philadelphia Contemporary, and Report for America are part of our community of educators and learners. They know our students and they know our program. So I'll leave you with a few takeaways, beginning with the idea that we ground everything in what the community cares about. That's the purpose. Then we plan with people, not for them. So when we engage with people and have them participate, they understand our program so that by the time they get to projects, those projects are theirs as well. And the last thing that I'll leave you with is keep the motor running. The idea is we're always iterating, but if you root your community in purpose and your connection as humans, with students at the center and learning that can happen all over, that can be sustainable. And I'm going to hand the microphone over to my colleague, Joel. Thank you so much.
I'm Joel Dankoff. I'm a teacher at the Revolution School in Philadelphia. We're a very small project-based and place-based school. I teach history and I do college counseling. I'm going to share my screen. This is the second part about building community through experiential learning, focusing on tying program to place. Jane talked about nurturing partnerships, and I'm going to focus, as I said, on tying program to place with a goal of really getting into experiential place-based learning. My focus is going to be on how you tie program into place. What things do you need to do to put it into practice? What do you need to do to make it happen? I've gotten it down to 5 key things that are going to help to tie program into place. The first is to have small groups. I have a 9th grade class that's studying revolutions at Revolution School, and we've started with world religions, and these are 5 of the 6 students in that class. So we are able to get out into the city, and that's pretty key with having small groups if at all possible. Another key factor is to know your curriculum and to know your place. The students in 9th grade are studying revolutions the first half of the year, and we were able to get out and see they're studying religions in the first half of the year, religions that were revolutionary. And we were able to get out and see different religious sites. So here are the students at the Mormon Temple here in Philadelphia, and the Catholic Cathedral off in the background. On the right is the Protestant church that we visited and toured, and the students are sticking their hands into the holy water. So getting to know your curriculum, not just the history curriculum, but the curriculum in other departments, making it interdisciplinary, and really knowing the place, knowing Philadelphia. This is where our classrooms are. We're a couple blocks south of City Hall, at the top of an office building. So our classrooms are here on the second from the top floor, going along the front of this office building. And when we were studying Islam, revolutionary religion, it was difficult to get out and visit Muslim holy sites like a mosque or religious buildings. So we instead had the students design a mosque as a project. And so we picked the site that was across the street. They could design their mosque on the top of these two parking garages. This is a hotel's parking garage, and this is the Wilma Theater, and so up at the top of here. So we went over there, we measured out the space, we figured out how many people would fit into that space and what could happen to be a mosque. Which direction should a mosque face? That's key. And then they were able to, this was the end of our unit on Islam, take things that we had learned in class and apply them to the design of that mosque. There was room for creativity, but there are also certain things that a mosque must have and certain things that a mosque should not have. We went out and measured and saw and figured out how they could do this, and they each wrote a proposal for their design for their mosque. Another piece of sort of knowing the curriculum and knowing the place, another example of that was when the 11th graders in United States history were looking at anti-Catholic violence, anti-Catholic riots. Many Catholics were coming from Ireland in the 1840s, and there was this huge anti-immigrant feeling in the 1840s where the Germans and the English were feeling like these Irish people are coming in and they're taking our jobs, and this led to a lot of violence. In fact, this is a Catholic university that was in Philadelphia, founded in 1842, and they decided because of this violence, after just a couple years in Philadelphia, to move one day's journey by horse out to the western suburbs. It's still there. It's Villanova University. Founded in 1842, but they moved out to the suburbs because of that anti-Catholic violence in the 1840s. Several churches were burned. There was an incredible amount. So we talk a lot about that in class and looked at some of these images, and then we brought the students to see the Catholic cathedral. One other thing we did in class was to learn about floor plans. They studied floor plans having designed a mosque, but we looked at the floor plan of the Catholic cathedral. And we looked at it as a rectangular building. We looked at these rows of thick walls, and then we went and took that floor plan to the cathedral itself and tried to figure out what was different. What was different from that floor plan's design and the walls of the actual side of the cathedral. So we looked at that and we saw that the original wall of that cathedral was flat. Here it is. It just goes straight across. But when they look at the cathedral itself, there's this one part of the wall that bumps out, this semicircle. And they noticed that the bricks there were a lighter color. The students deduced that this part of the building was not original. It wasn't in the original floor plan. The bricks are a lighter color. The original wall looked like this. It went straight across. And then they figured out what was different in the original part of the building and this semicircular part that was an addition 100 years later. And they realized that this part has a window. The original cathedral had no windows until you get to 45 feet. So we got out to the cathedral and the students saw that and figured that out. And then we asked the question, why? And it took them a couple minutes, but they were able to remember what we had studied about Catholic violence and why you might design a building to be a fortress. This building was intentionally designed so that people couldn't break the windows. It was, and it still is, Philadelphia's big Catholic cathedral. So another key piece of this, of tying program to place, is, I think, about nurturing relationships, getting to know people. We wanted in chemistry class, the chemistry teacher really wanted to take the students to a water filtration plant. They were learning about the chemical process of treating waste to make it clean. And because of the pandemic, a lot of the water filtration plants were not taking groups, but we found some connections to connections and other people, and were able to find somebody who was willing to take our students through towards the end of the pandemic into a water filtration plant. So it was key to have relationships there, and the chemistry teacher used the rest of us in the school to see who could do that. And the kids came back with this. The water filtration plant had given them this chart, which it shows shows typhoid deaths. Number of typhoid deaths dropped off quickly right around 1910. And this was when they started applying chlorine to the drinking water. And we were able to tie this into the US history curriculum and the progressive era. And so I was thrilled that they came back with this sort of historical documentation. Another key piece for being successful in project-based learning tied to place is having dedicated time and a coordinator. This year, I'm kind of the de facto coordinator for a lot of this. So helping to make all this happen, it takes a lot of time to put it into place. We have in our curriculum dedicated time on Friday for field work. I also have time that backs up to lunch with a long class block on Tuesdays that I can take my students out and nearby to see other things and to connect. Having this dedicated time, and then my class, you'll notice the history class backs right up to this fieldwork time, so we can go out for a long time starting at 10:30, as long as we make time for lunch, and really get out into the city and tie our program into place. Having a dedicated coordinator has been helpful because we're able to learn about the curriculum of other teachers. So I was telling you about the chemistry curriculum, but this was a book that the students read in English class, The Invention of Wings. And I found that I read the book, and I found that a lot of the book was about Quakers in Philadelphia, and we had the students then go to the Quaker Meeting House in Philadelphia. And we were the first group there after being closed for a couple of years because of the pandemic. So the students went to the Ray Street Meeting House and got to sit on the same pews that Lucretia Mott and Sarah Grimke sat on, and so it sort of picks up deeply into the curriculum there. And we learned about Quakerism. And then we saw the new building, which has a green roof. Here are the students standing on their green roof. And they talked about what happens in the old building. They changed the downspouts so that the water, when it rains on the old Quaker Meeting House from the 1850s, it goes into the downspouts and collects in these big cisterns. And that water is used in the toilet system to flush the toilets. And the students got there, and the students were able to tie that back to the chemistry curriculum and to their study earlier in the year of drinking water and going to the water filtration plant. And they were able to tell me about the green roof and how that helps to slow runoff. So how do you tie a program into place? These are, I think, the 5 key things to making it happen. Find ways to make small groups. Really know your curriculum and your place. And for me, it's not just knowing the history curriculum, it's knowing what else is going on in physics and chemistry in some of the other departments. Nurturing relationships is key, making sure to know people and connect with people and remember people. Dedicating time and dedicating a coordinator is incredibly helpful to doing this. And the last thing is that not everything should be project-based learning. I think our school learned that math, for example, doesn't really work well with lots of projects out in the field. Students need the basics of a standard, more traditional math class, for example. So, get to the last slide. This is our last image. I hope this has been helpful. I hope you will learn more about us. Check out Revolution School on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, of course, our website. Thank you so much.